Is SpaceX's Starship far ahead of NASA's SLS rocket? NASA is one of the first companies that come to mind when one thinks of space travel. And why not? They have dominated the spacecraft industry for decades now. However, there seems to be a shift in power as another company has entered the competition. It is none other than Elon Musk's SpaceX. Today we'll be talking about SpaceX and NASA and how their rockets, Starship and SLS respectively, fare against each other. Will NASA continue to dominate the industry, or has SpaceX set its sights on being the biggest space company on the planet? Well, stick around to the end as we answer these questions and more as we delve deeper into the two rockets, Starship and SLS, produced by the two space companies. Without further ado, let's begin the whole video. Both SpaceX and NASA have their positives and negatives over the other. However, it's pretty clear which one of these companies has far more positives compared to its negatives. However, before we analyze them both and give our verdict, let's first give our beloved audience a much-needed background for both the companies, which will make us better understand the whole scenario. We'll start with an update on SpaceX Crew 3, followed by a comparison between NASA's SLS and SpaceX's Starship. Let's start with the Crew 3 mission from SpaceX. Last November, SpaceX flew the Crew 3 mission to the International Space Station on their Falcon 9 rocket. NASA astronauts Raja Chari, Caleb Barron, and Thomas Marshburn, as well as Matthias Moore of the European Space Agency, took part in the mission. Their stint in the orbiting lab has recently come to an end. Crew 3 astronauts proceeded on their voyage to return to Earth over a week after Crew 4 landed at the space station, and they ultimately returned. According to rumors, the Crew 3 mission's Dragon capsule was slated to undock and depart from the International Space Station on the evening of March 4th, with a splashdown on May 5th. However, NASA authorities announced on May 3rd that the Crew 3 capsule's undocking has been postponed. The new undocking time provides for additional time to study the newest forecast information and shorter phasing. The change of command ceremony took place before the Crew 3 capsule was undocked. According to NASA, the Expedition 67 mission to the space station was led by Crew 3 astronaut Thomas Marshburn. However, with the change of command, Oleg Artemayev, a Russian cosmonaut, is now the mission chief's commander. The Crew 3 Dragon has now been undocked from the space station shortly after 1 a.m., as per the previously planned timeline. After undocking, the crew capsule was automatically pushed away from the orbiting space lab with a handful of brief rocket thrusts. The spacecraft then returned to Earth after a nearly 24-hour voyage. Crew 3's descent phase went off without a hitch, and the mission's Endurance Dragon capsule splashed down in the sea off the coast of Florida on Friday as planned. According to sources, the 4 Crew 3 astronauts were observed strapped inside the capsule's crew compartment before undocking. According to reports, the Crew 3 return mission returned to Earth with over 550 pounds of supplies from the orbiting space station. These events clearly show how active SpaceX is in its work. They are determined to test as many launches as the FAA allows them to learn how they can make their rockets better. The aforementioned tests were done on Falcon 9, which is an older version compared to Starship. This shows their untapped potential in the company has yet to be seen thanks to the amazing future of Starship. However, there is another spacecraft in the competition, NASA's SLS rocket. Let us now compare the two rockets to better understand which of these is more suited to be the future of space travel. So, are you guys enjoying the video? Here comes another challenge. Which one of the two companies is better? Is SpaceX even comparable to a company such as NASA, which has been at the top of the space industry for decades now? Stick to the end to find the answer. NASA's Space Launch System project has received a lot of criticism recently because it has been repeatedly delayed and has already cost a lot of money. In comparison to SpaceX's Starship, some are calling it a waste of time. But is the SLS system a complete failure? A full-depth comparison of the two will provide the answer. Let's dive right in. First and foremost, NASA is constructing the SLS system for its Artemis mission series. Hence, the success or failure of their vehicle is mostly determined by NASA. The SLS vehicle is roughly 100 meters tall, which is around 20 meters shorter than the fully stacked SpaceX Starship, which is now in development, and 11 meters shorter than NASA's previous Saturn V rocket. According to various sources, the SLS can produce 9.5 million pounds of thrust and can easily lift payloads of up to 86 tons to low Earth orbit. With this capacity, SLS surpasses the Saturn V as NASA's most powerful rocket in terms of thrust and payload capacity. When comparing the SLS to the Starship, SpaceX's mega rocket has a thrust of 17 million pounds and can easily deliver payloads of up to 150 tons to LEO. The SpaceX Starship outperforms the SLS in terms of thrust and cargo capacity. In terms of launch costs, NASA is expected an SLS launch will cost around $2 billion. SpaceX's Starship, on the other hand, will cost less than $10 million per launch in 2 to 3 years, according to Musk. The launch costs of SLS and Starship are vastly different. However, one thing to note is that Starship is a reusable rocket, and its cost will continue to reduce with repeated launches. But NASA's SLS launch vehicle is not. However, even if Starship leads in terms of cost, it is believed that the cost of SLS would decrease as it gains experience through launches. NASA has already spent nearly 3 times the $10 billion it intended to spend on the SLS vehicle's development. The project's constant delays have caused such devastation. However, NASA awarded SpaceX $3 billion for the development of the Starship lunar lander. Due to repeated delays in the FAA's environmental review, SpaceX's Starship orbital launch is currently being pushed out. However, Starship is nearing the completion of its first orbital mission. However, NASA's SLS is well behind schedule and will not be able to conduct any test launches. Following several difficulties, NASA moved SLS to the launch pad and then progressively rolled it back for investigation. Only after a successful rehearsal can it be launched into orbit. 3 attempts to conduct this rehearsal have so far failed, and the most recent information indicates that SLS will not launch until August of this year. Because Starship is only held back by FAA approval, it'll likely reach orbit first. Nonetheless, NASA's Orbit Shuttle program has successfully launched over 800 humans into space. Since May 2020, SpaceX has launched 22 humans into space. SpaceX will have to travel a long way to beat NASA's record. However, the SLS falls short of SpaceX's Starship. NASA's competence is still well ahead of SpaceX's. And because the SLS is NASA's most powerful rocket, we can't dismiss it. In the end, I'd like to say that SpaceX has immense potential, and it should be permitted to be flown into space. The FAA has already delayed the decision of giving SpaceX and the Starship program approval to launch to space, citing environmental issues. The FAA should understand by allowing SpaceX to work and launch Starships, the door towards living on Mars might open, which would ultimately help us in the long run, thus overruling the environmental issue. Moreover, its owner Elon Musk has said that the company plans to launch at least a Starship every week. Such ambitious plans means that SpaceX means business, and they should be allowed to do this, as ambition will only benefit humanity as a whole. One needs to comprehend the possibilities that are available to him in terms of space travel. He or she shouldn't be bound by the limits of human thinking, thus one should broaden his creativity and look for new ways that current technology could be improved, and later implement those ways, replacing the old ones. So are you excited to see what the future holds for spaceflight? Will SpaceX's Starship be primarily used, or the SNS rocket from NASA? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to watch more of our amazing videos, then stay tuned.